Money for nothing. We are GrokTALK, and we are back for our second segment on November 9th, 2013 at the beautiful Concord CNHT studio in New Hampshire.
Money for nothing. That's what we were talking about during the break.
That's
money
right.
For nothing.
Well, you know, I didn't plan this, but we're almost always talking about money for nothing, so I can't go wrong with that one. So, all right, now we're going to talk about what Lynette wants to talk about. New Hampshire House Rep, Republican from Merrimack. What district are we now? 21?
21.
21? We used to be 19, now we're 21.
Right.
We're old enough to drink.
Given what's been going on.
You know, we don't need ID to vote. So, I want to talk about some bills you've sponsored, and if you want somewhere to interject what was going on this week at the special session, by all means do.
Nancy Pelosi ran the State House this week.
She did, yeah.
Right. Let's pass it to see what's...
You want to put your mic closer.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Now, we can hear you.
Okay. We had Nancy Pelosi running the State House this week. Let's pass it to see what's in it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is SSHB0001-I or some such thing. It's a bill to basically accept the Medicaid expansion money.
Yep.
And it's $2.4 to $2.7 billion, depending on who you ask. And we talked about it at the beginning of the program. They just wanted you to vote on it without reading it.
Right. And it's a bill to bankrupt New Hampshire.
Pretty much.
Yes. Yep. Read it. Let's pass it. We'll read it later. And the clerk had a copy. There was a motion to have a recess so copies could be distributed to all the reps in Reps Hall that day. That was voted down by the majority party. And they passed it without seeing it. And it was strictly down party lines finally. All the Republicans voted no. All the Democrats voted yes. And we passed it without seeing it.
And I did write a post that day, or the next day, about it, that everybody should run against their Democrats on that vote.
Exactly.
I don't care whether you're right or you're left, Republican or Democrat. It starts to illuminate a really bad principle in that we are no longer being governed. You know, I am a big fan of open and transparent government. I want to know what the process is. I want the process to be followed. It may still result in an outcome that I don't like, but at least I can say everybody at the right time had the chance to put their input into it and to change it if necessary.
And this is New Hampshire. Most of our bills are not that long. And while this is long by our standards, it's not that long.
No.
It's a couple of pages.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really no excuse for that.
No. And what's even worse, the calendar came out. Tuesday, they have the public hearing. Wednesday, they have a work session. Thursday, it's being exec.
When you say exec, what do you mean?
That means the committee is voting on it to present it to the House. You have your public hearing. That's going to be in Reps Hall because they're expecting a crowd.
Yeah,
they'll have the public hearing.
It's on November 12th, right?
Yes, yeah, Tuesday. Yep. The 13th, the committee's going to have their work session, whether to amend it, do any changes, add anything to it would not be a surprise.
Start it on fire.
And then Thursday, they exec it where who's ever on that committee is going to vote on the bill as to how they're going to present it to Reps Hall and how we're to vote on it. And it's all being done in 3 days.
And normally a bill of this type would take how long?
Well, when they work on the budget, it's the whole session, it seems. I mean, they start in January and we don't vote on the budget until June.
Okay. Something similar, or, the budget's, that's a big deal.
Well, this is a big deal.
Yeah, but it's sort of like lots of dollars, but in kind of one line item, though,
exactly.
Versus a budget that's got thousands.
Yeah,
okay, we'll take something like right to work.
Okay.
That was a big deal. It took the whole. We have crossover halfway through session. We didn't vote on it until the end of session, so it went through the House and it went through the Senate. Well, the House, we finally voted on it. It took the whole session.
Yeah, and crossover for our non-New Hampshire folks means when the bills from one chamber cross over to the next. So all the House bills go to the Senate, and all the Senate bills come down to the House.
Yeah.
So anyway, this Medicaid bill it is one line item, but there's a lot of management details in how this money is administered, where it's going to go, how they're going to use it, blah, 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 blah. And so it's not something that should be rushed at all. But, of course, when a Democrat wants something like this, like say Obamacare, they try to ram it through as fast as possible so public support doesn't rise up and go, you're going to pay if you don't slow down.
Right.
And they don't want to wait.
Who knows what else has been added to it?
Right.
I mean, they're famous for adding things to a bill, and well, if they pass the bill, this will be added also.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Again, I am somebody who is called an extremist right winger, and even if the Democrats are going to get this through anyways, do it the right way.
Exactly.
And as much as it may pain some Republicans for me to say this, I disagree with Jim Splain, who was in the legislature for years and years and years, now just became assistant mayor in Dover, I believe. But he and I could walk arm in arm when it came time for open and transparent government. That the right of the public to know what its government is doing was paramount. This is the absolute, and he got in trouble a couple of times for voting against his party, the Democrat Party, when he saw that this stuff like this was going wrong.
And he needs to he deserves kudos for being the guy who stood up when the Kathy Sullivan
the Mini Disclose Act
that we fought tooth and nail.
We broke that story at Granite Rock.
And pushed. I broke it at NH Insider.
Yep.
And then now I write at Granite Rock. So, but it was all the same deal. He stood up and he convinced enough Democrats in a Democrat legislature to vote against this bill that had breezed out of the Senate because it would cripple political speech in the state.
Yeah.
Absolutely cripple it.
Yeah.
And he stood up against it, and because of him, it failed.
Yes.
So while we disagree on almost everything else, a couple things he's good on. But I don't want to wander off too far. I want to talk about your legislation and what's coming up.
Well, I brought copies for you. I have three bills that I'm the prime sponsor on. All three go in different directions. There's one on religious liberties for students. There's one, a nice handgun. You got to get a good handgun bill in there. Firearms in general.
Do you have 2 copies of something? Because I have 2 prohibiting enforcement of federal law to ban certain
Oh,
firearms.
did I give you 2 of the same one?
Yeah.
Vulnerable user.
Oh, he needs it. Okay. All right. There we go.
Oh, and that was the third one, the vulnerable user. And that one I've worked on for a year with Bike Walk Alliance of New Hampshire. Them doing the bulk of the work because they came to me and asked me to sponsor it. This one comes to light with the horrific accident that happened over in Hampton when they had their Century ride and that young lady killed 2 cyclists.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Well, it wasn't because of them, because like I said, we've been working on this for a year. New Hampshire has bills that protects vulnerable users. This is like the frosting on the cake to make sure something happens. If, in fact, by negligence, construction workers are hit on the side of the road.
Oh, yeah. Troopers get hit.
Exactly. You're out walking your dog. And, I mean, not every town has these great sidewalks.
Yeah, like Guilford does around high school.
Exactly. So if you're
or in Portsmouth when you're on the regular sidewalk wearing a reflective vest.
Right. yeah, wearing reflectives and say a state senator just happens to run you over.
Exactly. Or if you're crossing from the State House to go to your car in the dangerous garage and stores, and you're hitting a sidewalk by, someone driving by.
Who just might be a liberal.
Exactly. This protects the vulnerable user. So that's one of the bills that I'm working on. The student religious liberties bill, that came about partially because of that mom here in Concord that was taken to court by an atheist group in Wisconsin.
Oh yes.
Because she prayed on the school steps. Now, why a group from Wisconsin has anything to say to someone in New Hampshire is beyond me, especially an atheist group. But this gives civil liberties to students if they want a prayer club before school, during lunch maybe. It gives them the same rights as any other club in the public schools. Now, New Hampshire doesn't have a problem with something like that right now. I sub in the Milford Public Schools, and they have a group that meets before school starts for prayer. They've had a Fellowship of Christian Athletes huddle which is a Bible study. They've had that at their school. So New Hampshire doesn't have a problem with it yet. But with this group from Wisconsin taking this mom to court, yeah, it's just around the corner.
Well, the knee-jerk reaction from the bureaucrats is to just give them what they want so they don't get sued.
Exactly.
Even though the Supreme Court, the U.S. Constitution, and numerous state constitutions have upheld the notion that you can carry a Bible in a public school, that you can pray in a public school, that you can have a moment of silence. And it doesn't have to be sanctioned, but you can have it, and they can't deny you that right.
Right.
Well, we see people like the ACLU, the group that does the separation of church and state, and I can't remember what that nitwit's name is, Reverend something or other.
Barry Lind?
Yes, thank you.
Barry Lind, sorry.
And, now the militant atheists have basically seized upon something that doesn't exist, which is the separation of church and state, which was only in a private letter to a bunch of Danbury Baptists who were complaining about such and such, right around the founding of the nation. The whole idea, and we see this even at the national level, where Obama will always say the freedom of worship versus the freedom of religious expression. We see that in the HHS mandate, where you are now being coerced by the federal government to break your own religious conscience. They want to completely clear out any expression of religiosity by the public citizens in the public square. If you wish to have freedom of worship, as Obama puts it, you are restricted only to within a church, and that's it. You cannot run your business according to your religious precepts, like Hobby Lobby.
Hobby Lobby.
Well, that's
Hobby Land. That's the ghetto.
Where it's owned by a Christian family. They certainly believe in their religious precepts. They run their business according to those things, and now they've filed suit against HHS and Secretary Sebelius, saying we don't want to provide contraceptives. We don't want to provide abortifacients, which may take a human life. And these people just drive me crazy, because all that was supposed to do was to keep the United States from forming a national religion, just like all the other European countries had at that time. My ancestors, my grandparents came from European countries that had state religions. Sweden, Lutheran. If you went somewhere else, from Great Britain or Ireland, it was the Church of England. That's all it was supposed to do. It was not supposed to keep religion out of the public square. So I want to say thank you for this. And I find it really hard to believe that we've come to such a point in our country's history, that we need people like you, Lynette, to propose a bill that says, if you want to pray, you can keep your prayer. If you want your Bible, you can keep your Bible.
And it's not just for, say, Christians. It's for the Jews, it's for Muslims, it's for whatever religion you have. If you have your book, your Bible, your Quran, your
sacred writings, you should be able to carry that into a public school, and if you want to read it on your lunch break, so be it. If you want to read it during a study hall, go right ahead. You're not offending anyone. You're not making anyone else read it. You're not trying to conform anyone to your ways. You should be allowed to. Yeah. And it certainly is coming to a head. I note with no small amount of irony that there is that suit by a Susan Galloway against a town, I think it is in New York, where they continually open their town council with prayer. And she's suing that violates separation of church and state. And it went to the Supreme Court, and at the beginning of the oral arguments for this suit, the court opened with prayer.
With prayer, yeah.
All right, so now we have this one, which I really like.
Yeah, prohibiting enforcement of any law which bans certain firearms or limits firearm magazine size.
Federal law, any federal law.
Yes, federal, sorry. Magazine size and establishing a criminal penalty for such enforcement. What this one is saying that is that the federal government decides that you can't have a magazine with more than 7 bullets in it. New Hampshire is going to file and say, no, you cannot regulate our state firearms rules. and there'll be a misdemeanor charge. We're going for felony, but we thought that was a little strong. We changed it to misdemeanor.
How about the stocks? Bring back the stocks.
There you go. Go to the guillotine.
No, the stocks is good enough.
Yeah, the stocks is good enough. Tar and feathers, maybe.
Ooh, there's an idea.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was, you talk about tar and feathers. If you ever watched the HBO presentation of the John Adams autobiography by what's his face? Anyway, the book John Adams. I forget the guy's name who wrote it. He's a historical writer. In the first or second episode, they actually tar and feather a guy in the show, and it's hot tar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they
And
pull
they
hot
strip
tar.
that poor bastard naked, and he's just showing up trying to do what they told him to do, taxes or something at the docks, and they tar and feather this guy. I mean, he dies. It kills you. The hot tar.
Oh really?
Oh yeah.
yeah,
It burns your skin.
It burns you. I mean, there's no surviving that in that time period.
Yeah.
So, even if he did survive, he would be completely deformed and incapacitated for the duration of his life. And they dump hot tar on his whole body and then dump him in feathers. I mean, it's brutal.
It clogs your pores. I mean, it does.
It doesn't come right off, and once it dries, it doesn't go away. It's tar,
tar.
So, anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
We're not going to tar and feather anybody, but rhetorically, perhaps.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I can think of a few.
When they have these mass shootings, which are horrible. I mean, words cannot describe how horrific it is to have a mass shooting, a movie theater, a school, doesn't matter where. We've never had that problem in New Hampshire. We have gun restrictions, not real strict, not real tight. When you look at cities like Chicago and Washington, D.C., who have some of the strictest gun regulations, they also lead the nation in handgun homicides. New Hampshire doesn't have that problem. Why should we put these bans on legal gun owners who are not abusing their rights owning guns and let the federal government take what they want? It's wrong.
I like this. Defensive citizen prosecuted by federal government. The Attorney General, and I can't wait to see this actually happen if it gets into law, shall defend a citizen of this state who is prosecuted by the United States government for violation of a federal law relating to the manufacture, sale, transfer, or possession of a firearm accessory, or ammunition owned or manufactured and retained exclusively within the borders of this state.
So if I buy something from Ruger that's made up in Newport, and it stays here in New Hampshire, I should be held blameless. Or same thing by Sig Sauer.
Yep.
Or any number of other folks.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I agree with Steve though. Given the voter fraud absolute mantra by the New Hampshire Attorney General, I'm not, I could see them going to court saying, he can't be guilty. I'm done, Your Honor.
Yeah, well, that's like, Nashua just this week, Ward 8 election, special election, Pete Silva, and a nice enough lady with an Indian name that I can't. She in 2011 or 2012 harbored Alicia Tierney, who was a resident of Ludlow, Massachusetts, is continuously registered in Ludlow, Massachusetts from 2009 to the present, and double registered in Nashua to vote in New Hampshire in the November 2012 elections for Democrats. She's a registered Democrat. Now, everybody says intent. What was their intent? Well, it's obvious what her intent was. Her intent was to vote in New Hampshire where her vote would matter to Democrats. That doesn't make it legal. Just because they say, how can you say she intends to live here? She's never lived here. She only double registered to vote here. She didn't vote twice, but she voted here. Just to have elected them.
And you notice that the local paper of record in that area, the Telegraph, really didn't say hardly anything at all about that.
Well, they emailed me. They emailed me and asked me about it, and I told them my thought. They didn't use it.
No,
But they did when Pete Silver made a comment, and yes, it probably shouldn't have been said. Made a comment. Everybody jumps on the bandwagon. And
political correctness, yeah.
Yes, political correctness. Now, they didn't say that Pete Silver is black. That's what surprised me. Usually they're the ones that are screaming discrimination.
They went out of their way to make sure that there was no ethnic component to.
Exactly. But, they didn't bring into the fact that Pete Silver is black, and yes, he made a comment about her Indian race. Usually they're always saying that blacks are the ones discriminated against. Why would a black discriminate about someone else? If he was really trying to be discriminatory, he would. That's not Pete.
You know what the difference was? A D and an R.
Exactly. Exactly.
Anyway,
And they look at Pete as an Italian.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. Jennifer Horn threw him under the bus.
Yeah.
The chair of the New Hampshire GOP threw the former assistant majority leader under the bus.
Well, he's probably a little too conservative for her.
Right. And I have to give props. I did leave a comment there. I didn't put it up on Granite Rock later. I kind of forgot about it. Got distracted by other things. But you know, one of the few people of note within the NHGOP that came to his own defense, or came to his defense, Bill O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
And said, you know, enough of this stuff. And frankly, everything that Bill wrote was absolutely true. And I keep seeing that Jennifer Horn keeps handing the Democrats the political club of political correctness with which to bang her about the head and shoulders and anybody else. They delight in this. Every time she does this, they must be laughing out loud. Harold Kirsten, you know, spokesmouth for the Democrat Party and OFA, must go, this is the gift that just keeps on. They just come to our office and hand this thing to us.
Oh, and I admit that the Tea Party Civil War that they started, I'm going to say they started it because we were willing to play along as long as they kind of played along with us.
Yeah.
But, you know, they've declared war. And I was willing to continue to support, you know, most Republicans, you know, because Democrats are such a disaster. But it's getting to the point where I may no longer just do that because you have people like your committee man telling you that, you know, you're this, what did he call us?
Flat earther.
Flat earthers. You know.
And oh, yes. And let's name names. This is Steve Dupree, former NHGOP chair a couple of times, I believe. Currently now the national committee man from New Hampshire to the Republican National Committee, standing up over the Medicaid expansion and calling the only people, well, I've got the quote here,
I quoted
folks.
this very briefly in the beginning. Yeah, he wrote a whole post about it. So.
Oh, yeah. Let me bring this up.
You got a couple minutes, so.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's a whole bunch of
Flat Earth Tea Partiers and Ted Cruz fans.
Yeah. Well, it's just, well, let's read the whole thing, though, because it does make sense. And now I gotta find it. We write too much. We write too much. Here we go.
Oh, I know.
Even a casual reader of the Grok knows that we've been writing about the Civil War. Okay. Come on. Finish up. Now raging with the NHGOP and GOP. The Virginia governor's race has now brought that to a head. Nice to see on the topic of expanding Medicaid here in New Hampshire that former NHGOP chair and current National Committee man Steve Dupree decided to bring the gas and the match. Good to know honesty when we hear it. And this was from an email that was sent to me describing what was going on. That the person just arrived in time to hear an influential member of the board saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, what a great plan it was. And the only people who would not want to accept federal money for this program are Flat Earth, Tea Partiers, and Ted Cruz fans who don't want to pay taxes but still want their Social Security. Now, does that tell you where we stand within the hierarchy of the Republican Party? Now, in the journalistic world, we are, or have been up until recently, the bloggers are always seen at the bottom of the totem pole. We're the people in our pajamas in our mother's homes, in the dark, in the cellars. As opposed to the journalists like at the New York Times that have just levels, and upon levels of fact checkers and editors, and they still let plagiarists and fantabulous writers just make up stuff on their front page. Good to know. And, you know, Senator Mitch McConnell has declared war on us and said that we have to nominate grown-ups that won't scare the general public.
And my point was, of course, that the Democrats like that too.
Yeah.
They're very happy that the. I think I was trying to think about this on the way here. I think that the DC establishment, ruling class, aristocracy, which includes lots of Republicans, has downstreamed this whole concept that, the Democrats do a really good job of controlling their voting base, all levels of their voting base, from the center all the way to the left. Now, the people who actually run the party are the same as the people on the far left. So they basically harass the more moderate members of the party to fall into line. I think the GOP has finally decided that they can do the exact same thing, except in reverse. Whereas they are kowtowing to the moderates in their party and people to the left of center, while pretty much trying to destroy their base. That really appears to be the situation.
And indeed, the Mitch McConnell, who are the grown-ups? Jerry Ford, Bob Dole, John McCain, Mitt Romney. Grown-ups, nice people, but as I wrote, whose combined charisma levels couldn't light a self-relighting trick birthday candle.
Well, that's where we are.
And you look at some of these people, and Mitch McConnell, he has basically declared war on the Tea Party. Chuck Grassley has declared war on the Tea Party. The NRSC has declared war on the Tea Party. Tell you what, if you ask us to leave, we just might, but then you'll have this self-fulfilling prophecy. We may lose as a third party, but you most certainly will. We may not win, but you will most certainly lose.
And that's the second segment of GrokTALK's GrokTALK. Thanks, Lynette, for coming. You're welcome to stay. Josh is going to be talking about some of this stuff as we lead into that segment about finding good candidates and this rift that we've been talking about. And I'm Steve McDonald with Skip Murphy, Lynette Peterson, and Josh Yusuf just joined us. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Welcome. How are you? Nice to see you. I'm so sorry for my no-show, Lynette.
Hey
how
there.
are you? Nice
Great,
to
how are
see
you?
Steve. How are you, man? How are you?
Don't you up,
Listen, forgive me, please.
Keep doing that a few more times.
It's on camera, so we're...
Yeah, we got the camera going.
Great.
Now that's what you should post.
I was just kidding.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to go to work at Reebok,
Okay.
so I can't stick around.
All right, well, thanks for
But if you
coming.
know anyone that wants to buy a raffle ticket for $10 for a Browning 325 rifle, send them my way.
The Merrimack County?
No, this is with the Congressional Sportsman Club. And a group down in D.C. actually donated the gun to us. Yes, which was...
325?
Yeah, 325.
That's an odd caliber.
Yeah, I thought so too. My husband thought so, but it
It's
looked...
like, what,
and it's bolt action.
I have to do another caliber? It's like I've got enough already.
I know. I've narrowed it down to 3.
I started off wanting 2.
Yeah.
I just stick to the fun handguns.
Yesterday, Scott emailed me and said that Collectible Firearms in Merrimack has
Oh, yeah, sure.
800, you're off, 880 round crates, 762 by 54, right? And
Yeah.
I need that for my Tula. So I'm like, I go scooting over there after work, and they had to close early for some reason. I'm like, now I gotta go back. I said, son of a bitch, I gotta go back today after the show and hope they still have some.
Yeah, it's,
Because nobody ever has it. Nobody ever has
it's
a
tough
second
getting
chance.
one, and also tough getting bulk. I mean, you can get little...
Oh,
Oh, yeah, you
it's
can get
starting to get better.
20
Yeah, it's
round
better.
packs of it.
Yeah.
And the
I'm afraid
price
to
is
shoot.
kind of the
It's
same,
like-
but you gotta buy
I
so
was
many
for a
of them.
long time. Well, when 223 got to be over
Oh,
1,000,
nope. Oh, we got another minute. Sorry.
$1,000 for 1,000 rounds,
Yeah.
I went, I can't do this anymore. Now that it's finally back down, but it's still hard getting the bricks for the 22, which is what my wife
Oh, yeah.
shoots.
Well, I like shooting that. I have a 22 handgun. My girls have it because my girls hunt with their father. They have a 22 shotgun that they just for target practice. We like plunking off the
Switch
22s.
chairs if you want.
No, we're good.
They're
I'm
dangerous.
fine.
You can share.
Sit down.
Yeah,
man.
no
Well, I
shit.
started off with a 22 for my wife, and I started off with a 9. Then I got a 9 AR. Then I got a 380 for her because she wanted to go up. I've got a little 380.
40?
40.
Same thing.
Oh, you got the
There's a
slide.
compact, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Oh, I got the little guy.
Everybody look at the guns.
Oh my gosh.
Like we
Who
say.
wants to rob us? Come on in.
No, I have the nice little laser.
Oh, look at
Oh.
you.
Yeah.
This is exactly mine with the full grip.
Well, this is
I
what we
love this
say.
gun.
We are the safest podcast in New Hampshire. I didn't
That's
know you-
all right.
I didn't know
And we're
you
starting the
carried
next
it.
Oh,
segment.
but of course, my husband loves me.
But yeah, we got a 380 Walther,
Yeah.
and then I added the 223. Got
Coming back, Skip.
Steve.
Have a great day,
Thank you,
guys.
Lynette.
That's great.
You're going to want to check out the video. But at the end of that segment and the beginning of this one, because everybody showed everybody what they were carrying.
It started with you, Steve.
Started with me, and everybody was low. Everybody, we are the safest podcast in New Hampshire.
GrokTV.